I'm not Rosie. This is Rosie, obviously. But what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of set the context. And one of the reasons I'm having to do that is that Rosie has been really modest about her achievements. When we came back from having done the channel, and we'll talk all about it in a little while. When we were on the plane back, and we knew there's a tradition, we've had a dozen Channel Islanders swim the channel, and there's a big load of people meeting us at the, meeting Rosie at the airport, and there were 120 people, and she said, oh, Dad, I don't know why they're doing all this, it isn't that big a deal, and so she's been a bit reluctant to talk about things, so I'll ask Rosie questions and explain a little bit of the context, and also I'm allowed to do that because I'm a really proud dad. I think what she's achieved is quite something. I don't know if you've ever heard Donald Trump talking about his daughter. He gets it completely wrong, as you can imagine, and it's quite seedy. Have you ever heard Paul McCartney talking about Stella McCartney? What he says is, first he talks about all of his other children as well, all the time. So I've got two other daughters who I think are equally fantastic as my Rosie. But he says, the thing he loves seeing when he goes to see Stella is he can remember her as a child, and he just overwhelming with pride, and I feel that. So I love that picture. That's Rosie at Vovat, and we don't know what that prize was for. It wasn't for swimming. Rosie wasn't a brilliant swimmer as a youngster. She did beau séjour and she did water polo at uni, but she'll explain where it came from. And I love that next picture along as well. That you can't see the dot really. That's her when she started the swim. 13 hours later she finished it, and we've got some video that we'd love to show you of her swimming because it was really smooth, but you can see her association with swimming. As I say, she's very proud. She was allowed Coke and double marathon stickers at the end because she loves wearing a onesie at all times. So I think just to set the context though, how many lengths of a swimming pool to swim the channel do we think? Let's throw out some numbers to me. 1,000. Actually, I can't remember what the next slide says. It's a lot. It's a lot. That's right. She had to do 60,000 strokes. So, and if you think about it now, if you went back, and lots of people start in the middle of the night, she would be starting at 2 o'clock yesterday morning and just about finishing now. And the next slide tells us the number of, I think it's 1,200 lengths. And we haven't got time, but what we would do is get you to do 60 of these in a minute, because that's what Rosie was doing. But what's amazing about Rosie's story is, so that's, you could track, I don't know who else, there are people in the room who track this, so you spend a day or tracking where she is, and every minute you can see one of the blue dots coming up. And where it begins to turn around was when they first entered the channel, the swimming lane. And the guy said, I wasn't on the boat, Rosie's mum was on the boat with one of Rosie's friends. And he said, look, we're very worried about the weather. You're going to have to increase your stroke rate from 60 to 65, that's like if you're running a marathon, suddenly being told you've got to run it 10% quicker. And she had another 8 hours to go. It really is quite an achievement. Oh, that was the answer. So if you imagine most people manage to knock out 20 or 40 lengths, Rosie had to do the equivalent of 1,500 lengths. So we'll start asking Rosie questions. So those are pictures of her on the swim. It was a nice smooth day, wasn't it? Tell us.
Yeah, so I was really lucky with the weather on the day. So we knew that there was going to be a storm coming in. And what happened is I was meant to be swimming at kind of the middle of September. Got a phone call on a Saturday night, the beginning of August, saying, look, the weather's going to turn. If you want to do it, if you want to do it soon, come and do it. It'll be absolutely perfect on Tuesday, but you need to do it in a certain amount of time. I was in the UK anyway, meant to be doing this other big swim, and I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. Shall I do it right now? It's 6 weeks early. And then I had a lot of people saying, I don't think it's a good idea. Like, I think you should kind of, stick with your plan. But my gut was saying, actually, I want to do this now. We had an amazing July, and it was still really lovely weather then. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'm ready to do this now. And on the day, it was, I was so lucky with my conditions. It was like swimming in a swimming pool. It was so incredibly flat. We had like an hour where it got very rough and like before the storm, and there was a lot of rain. But apart from that, it was so calm the whole way through, which I was, was really fortunate. So yeah.
So when did it all start? When did you start thinking you might swim the channel?
So I started swimming about 6 years ago. I was at university and got ill and had to come home for a semester. And Mum was really into swimming at the time. And as I started to get better, I didn't have any friends here. They were all at university. And so Mum was trying to encourage me just to, come, get out and about and try and start doing a bit of exercise, because I hadn't exercised at all for 2 years. So I started swimming then. And then I was adamant. I started and was really not very good at all. And then as I got better, people were saying, oh, you really should think about doing the channel, because there's a lot of people from Guernsey who've done it. And I was absolutely adamant I was never going to do it because I love swimming and I didn't want to ever not love swimming. And then a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, my friend James, and we'd always been very close training partners, he swam the channel, and on the day that he did it, I was then suddenly like, actually, I do love swimming, but maybe I love it so much that I should take on a challenge. Maybe I should start thinking about it. So once he did it, the day after, I phoned up the pilot and booked a slot for 2 years' time. So then had 2 years of training for it. And it was hard, and there were some bits of which were really difficult. But actually, I have come out now still loving swimming, and still I want to swim all the time, which is not what I expected to do at all, but I think is a really positive thing about it, which helps from a lot of the support that I've had through other swimmers and various other people, that it's always been a very sociable thing to do, and it's always been fun, I guess.
So to give us some idea of the training that you would have done. I know it varied, but from like the Christmas, so for the 9 months up to it, how much swimming were you doing and things?
So I kind of started to ramp it up a year before, and then swam to Alderney the August before, and then was training. I absolutely hate swimming in the sea in winter. I cannot stand it. It's my least favourite part of the week. So I thought, I don't want to be swimming I know I've got loads of training to do, so I went off to Australia for 7 weeks so I could swim in warm weather, which was the best idea ever. But part of that was that I did a really long swim over there, so I then knew that this swim was going to be I actually thought it was going to be about 12 hours, so had to ramp up the training significantly so that I was able to do this swim in February, which meant pretty much all of my training from November to February was in the pool. And I hate swimming in the pool as well. It's really incredibly boring. So I was swimming probably about 10 times a week, maybe a bit more, trying to go in my lunch times, going every single night after school, after work, in the evenings, and then also having to do a couple of cold water swims as well at the weekends.
Tell them about Australia, because nothing's simple with you, is it, Rosie? Tell them about what happened when you were the Australia swim. So
before I did the swim, I was very anxious about there being sharks, and everyone said to me, look, you're absolutely ridiculous. There's, it's a safe swim, there's not going to be sharks. So I was like, right, okay. And then I did it, and I'd made an error that I'd put my Alderney time in for the time for my qualifying swim, but Alderney's really, really tightly assisted. So they thought I was an Olympian. So I was in, there's 20 people who start off the swim. I was one of them, and they were all Olympians. But actually it worked really well, because then I got a massive head start. And so I finished in 7 hours, and everyone from 7.5 hours onwards got pulled out because there was some great white shark spotted. So they pulled out 100 people in the swim. And it was just luck, really, that I managed to kind of get through it. But yeah, so that was exciting.
Yeah, that was exciting. Right, so those are some of. Tell us. Let's get back to the swim itself. So we've got you swimming through a bit of muck. We've got the boats. We've got the food. Tell us about the swimming through the muck. Tell us about that, or?
Yeah, so it's not the cleanest of waters. So there was, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but there were some kind of scummy bits. There was a lot of jellyfish. That was kind of one of the main obstacles, is that throughout the beginning bit, there were loads of jellyfish near Dover. Because it had been an exceptionally hot year, there had been more jellyfish. But yeah, so but it was swimming through kind of some obstacles there. And then there was also a lot of ships there as well. So you'd be swimming and you'd see lots of different like Navy ships and then other ships as well, which made it a bit more interesting as the swim was going.
And the feeds, I mean, that's a science of itself, isn't it? And you only have 10 seconds, don't you, to take on food, is that right?
Well, the quicker you feed, the quicker you can get back to swimming. So you, what's happening there is there's a rolling pin and then someone has connected my feed to the rolling pin because you're not allowed to touch anyone at all. But that's one of the rules of it. And that was actually one of my biggest anxieties about it, is because I did it 6 weeks earlier, I hadn't practiced with the food at all. So that was kind of quite a gamble, as to often people can get really sick of things. But I was really lucky. And so they give you food which is really warm, so then you get warmer yourself, because actually it's a really long time to be swimming in not such warm waters.
Tell me about the Jaffa cakes.
And then the most stressful bit of the whole swim was I don't like Jaffa cakes, and they had given me, you get fed solid food every hour, and every third hour they were giving me Jaffa cakes, so I was trying to eat them. Jaffa cakes are really dry, and on the 11th hour they said if you swim really, really fast, you can get there within 12 hours, if not you're going to miss the tide. So I knew I had to eat this feed really, really quickly. So I put 2 Jaffa cakes in at once and then started really choking. And then I was like, oh God, because if someone has to come in and like pat you on the back, then the whole swim won't be cancelled. So it was fine, but I'm never ever eating a Jaffa cake again.
So that's the finish. Well, it's not the best image, but the finish was typical Rosie, wasn't it? It was great fun. Tell us a bit about how you finished.
So again, it was really stressful with the tides at the finish. They were trying to go there's this point, the closest point to it, but I missed that tide, but then luckily got to the next bit, which was a beach, and they have this hotel on the beach, and so it must be a place where lots of swimmers finish, so they come down and they give you champagne. So that was a really nice reception, although my mouth was covered in saltburn, so I actually couldn't, that's the last thing you want to drink. But my friend who was on the boat and then did the last bit with me got 2 lots of champagne. 2 lots of champagne,
yeah. And then I think it's worth, because it looks a very, very individual sport, doesn't it? It seems, and it, well, we know it isn't, because, and we'll talk about the team, but tell them a bit about your mum on the boat, bless her, eh?
Yeah, so because I was meant to be doing it 6 weeks later, I had organised my crew, and everyone says don't have parents on your boat because they get far too invested in it. So if something bad had happened, then they get very anxious about it. But because we got 2 days' notice, my parents were, dropped everything and came. And actually that was really good and really supportive to have my mum on the boat and then have my friend there as well, who again, dropped everything, arranged all her childcare so that she could have it. So the boat itself was an incredibly supportive crew. Everyone was really positive throughout it. And throughout the whole 2 years of training, you need people to swim with. I won't swim in the sea by myself because I don't think it's safe. So you're always asking people to swim with you. There's a whole group of swimmers. But it's also that backdrop of the people at home as well, and my friends who, I'll come home after being absolutely shattered and someone will make me a cup of tea, or, it's a whole team thing, swimming, and every sport, I think. You need those people around you to make anything happen.
Yeah. So those 2 images, so that's like the one on the left, was that the 12-hour? The one at the bathing pools? What?
The one on the left is a 6-hour, so it was probably similar weather to today. It was incredibly rough, and it was the week before, and so we had to do 6 hours, or I had to do 6 hours, and that was probably the hardest swim that I did because it was so rough and it got really cold. And then the one on the right is we did a mile an hour for 12 hours, which was actually just really fun. It was, the most gorgeous weather. We sunbathed in between. So the quicker you do the mile, the more rest you get between the next hour. So, it was all about making it an enjoyable process and loving what you do.
So you know, Zeph, first of all, the very first talk was saying about purpose and meaning. What I don't know if this is too philosophical a question, but what would be your purpose in terms of swimming the channel, do you think?
I think for me, it was a big goal that I had. It was what I aimed towards for the last 2 years. Like, everything that I've done has been for that. But equally to me, so the channel was my goal. My sister, who's not a swimmer, really doesn't like swimming, she swam to Herne the week before, and I think her goal was just as big as my goal, just they're all very personal. So her achievement was equal to, if not greater to mine, because, everyone has, it's all about making things right for you. And so my purpose then was the channel. I came away thinking, I'm going to hate swimming, I'm going to do something else, I'm going to do more running, whatever. But actually, I don't like not having something to aim for. So already we've kind of decided what our next big swim is and what we're going to do next year. And I think it's so good to have something to work towards and to have an aim. And even if you don't succeed at it or it doesn't go to plan, it's all about kind of overcoming adversity and building your resilience.
So your last question, actually, and it's to Destiny and Theo, who we know from park runs and all sorts. So inspire them to do the channel or do whatever goal they want. What would be your 2 or 3 key points to tell them about it?
I think it's all about, it's about having fun and enjoying what you do. And, my experience would be completely different if I didn't have fun. And there was at one point, and actually it really resonated with me, one of the guys that I swim with at lunch, at one point, he said to me, I actually can't say what he said because it was a swear word, but he was like, you're taking this too seriously, you need to have fun. And I think that really changed my view on it. And, it's about doing what you love. And that should always kind of be your focus.
Yeah.
Thank you.